What we're going to do today is how do we understand marriage from and if you get to see if there's anybody. Sorry. Okay. Marriage is a sensitive topic. Marriage is an important topic in the church. It's I always say that celibates don't get a service for celibacy. There is no such thing, right? Is there such a thing called a sacrament of celibacy? It doesn't exist. But in the church, there is a sacrament dedicated for marriage. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think the church says, people who are getting married, we have to make sure that there is a sacrament for them? Why? Married people, you know why. Because it's hard. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Absolutely. Right? Why else? Yes?
It's a commitment to servitude?
Commitment towards servitude, yes. Because how much that entails, how difficult that is, absolutely, yes. Why else?
It's like baptism. There's like a physical change that occurs.
Ah, right. There is God's grace need to be concentrated a lot more, right, in your life because you need God's help. You cannot do this by yourself, right? That realization is there in the church, absolutely. So what I have is I have a few questions that I've prepared, reflection questions. Please don't be too specific when it comes to answering these questions. But in the sense where don't give specific examples, so to speak, that's what's happening in your life. But these are just a few examples that I have particularly designed for those who are married. So the first reflection question is this. How well did you know your spouse during the time of your marriage? A percentage. A percentage. How well did you know? Percentage-wise, like for example, this 100% of how you know your person, 20%, right? Percentage-wise, how well did you know when you were getting married to your spouse? How well do you think you know? So we have a 92%. Could we, just so that we can hear other people? 92%? 50%? Okay. 50%? Okay, all right. 70? Okay, all right. 78%? Okay, all right. All right. 78%? Okay. We got 78, we got 50. All right, we got 92, was it? Yes. Huh? 5%. We got 5%. Okay. All right. 5%. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else? 45. Okay, a little less than a half. 45%. Okay? Please don't discuss now with your spouse. This is not the time to have that discussion. Anyone else? Anyone else? 100%. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So how did you come up with that number? I'm just wondering, how did you come up with that number? So those who have answered, how did you come up with that number? So at the time of your marriage, just getting to know the other individual. So how did you get to know that person?
The years we spent together before.
Okay, all right. So during the dating time and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so okay, all right. What about the others?
The frequency of surprises.
Frequency of surprises. Speak more. Okay. What do you mean by that?
She'll say something that completely didn't expect.
Yeah.
I think I can kind of predict it.
Okay.
It's like out of no one like, oh.
Right.
Kind of brings that percentage down.
Right. Okay. By the way, it's a percentage of how much you like the person. Okay. It's a percentage of how much you understood the person. Right. Okay. All right. So that's how you came to that number. Okay. How else? How did you get to that number that you mentioned?
I think there's just so many life experiences that they go through, and then you see that with a person in that situation, right?
Okay.
And you just don't have that whole breadth of experiences before marriage.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. So going through various experiences, life experiences, you're able to assess how well you know that individual. Okay. All right. That's fair. Okay. Tell us. Yes.
You asked targeted questions.
Sorry?
You asked each other targeted
Oh, here we go. Right. Targeted questions. What does that mean? What are targeted questions? What does that entail?
questions. It was like 20 questions.
Sounds like an assessment to me. I don't even have a spiritual service assessment with 20 questions. Okay, so
You
you...
asked specific questions about our stance on marriage, divorce,
Okay.
abortion, our stances on a lot of moral issues. So we kind of dove right into it.
Okay.
That was day 3.
Okay. So you asked specific questions, and I'm very sure that you felt very uncomfortable answering these questions after day 3. So, okay, all right. So you asked questions. Okay, you asked questions. Okay, all right. How else? So now that you're married, what's the percentage of how much you know that person?
5%.
Sorry? 5%? It decreased? Oh, I see. Now that you've married, those who answered the question before, percentage of how much you knew when you got married, what's the percentage now? How much do you know? Huh? More? Can you give a number to me? 100%? Not 100. Okay. So ballpark. Okay. How much more? So you said 92. 92 and a half? 95? Okay. 95. Okay. 95%. Okay. Who else?
Can we ask what his wife?
Who else? How much do you know now? 90? Okay, 90%. Okay. Okay, you're shaking your head as well, around 90%. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Where you are in your relationship right now, perhaps you're married now 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. How much do you know, percentage-wise?
67%.
67%. Okay, 2/3 of the way. 2/3. Okay, how many years of marriage?
12.
12. Why am I asking this question? Why is this significant? Why is this significant? Because when you think about how well you know the other individual, right? That's why, well, clearly you are convinced that this is the right person for you. And that's why you married the person, right? It was the percentage that you know the person was good enough for you, where you said to yourself, you know what, I'm going to live with this person the rest of my life. Yes? We agree that's why you got married, correct? So, percentage-wise, when you know, I don't want to say there's literature out there, right, that says how much percentage, it doesn't matter how many years you have dated, 5 years or 10 years, whatever it may be. Percentage-wise, do you know how much you actually get to know the other person? Percentage-wise? About average. When you really get to know the other person, how much? When you're in dating right before you're getting married? Percentage-wise?
25%.
Huh?
25-30%.
45-30%?
25 to 30%.
25 to 30%? Okay. Anyone else? 50%? Okay.
I said 15.
15? 15? Okay. I would say maybe 3%. Maybe 5%. maybe. I mean, you really have to spend a lot of time and a lot of investment in the relationship to really get to at least 5%, 5-6%. And this may be coming as a shock to you. This may be coming as a shock to you. Why is that the case? You know, many people who get married, right, after marriage, they begin to realize, oh my goodness, there's a lot of things I did not know about this person, right? It's only after marriage, certain things actually you get to know about this person. I thought I knew this person. But you know, before you get to know the other person, just imagine, ask this question to yourself. Percentage-wise, how well do you think you know yourself? And please don't deceive yourself saying that 100%. When you yourself don't know fully, how do you expect another person to know you well? Right? You yourself are trying to figure yourself out. You figuring out what, you know, the things that you've learned from your childhood, things that have happened in your life, and you're still trying to process what's happened in your life. You're still trying to figure out how to work out this purpose in our life. You're figuring out all these things, and you expect somebody else to know you when you yourself don't know yourself 100%. Somebody else, a complete stranger, within a 5-year range or 10-year range to know you 90%? Think again. Right? Yeah.
Can you talk about what it means to know yourself?
A person who knows themselves is being aware of where they are in their life, in their life circumstances, in their life situations. It makes sense of who they are, right? They have a sense of direction because of my background, my culture, my religion, all that. This is where I'm headed to. To be able to completely know yourself, you really have to essentially become a saint, right? Saints are the ones who actually are so close to God, everything of who they are revealed to them, right? They're the people who are so sure of themselves. They're the ones who are so sure of themselves to the point where they're so comfortable in their own skin, right? They're not dictated by another person's discipline or anything like that. They have their own set of things that they do based upon their own convictions, right? When we are working on that in our own life, how do we expect another stranger to get to know who we really are, right? That's why I said, we're giving so much more credit when we begin to say anything more than 5%, right? Because you have an entire lifetime to get to know the other person. But in that process as well, guess who you're also getting to know? Yourself. Absolutely. The last focus conference, I spoke about marriage being what? Remember the 2 boats example? It's not 2 people journeying in one boat. It's 2 people, 2 separate people traveling together in 2 boats, right? Journeying towards what? The purpose of our life, which is holiness. Life of purity. Life of chastity. Life of holiness. Okay? So, just want to highlight that. In other words, I did not say that to discourage one another and saying that, oh my goodness, this person is a complete stranger. No, because in your married life, you have to realize there are things that's in your boat that you don't even know about. There are things in your spouse's boat that you don't know about. And that's where conflicts come in, right? That's when you begin to interact with things with the things that's inside the other person's boat. And the other person's boat is also interacting with things that's inside your boat. And then you're complete shock. You're asking, oh my goodness, before marriage, this is not what you were like. Right? Before marriage, you used to do this, you used to do that. Now, what happened? Right? You're acting like your dad. You're acting like your mom. Right? We begin to see a different side of them, and we're shocked. We say to ourselves, who did I get married to? Couples have asked that question. Achit, I've married now for 5 years, 6 years. Sometimes I wake up and ask myself, who is this person? I don't know who that person is anymore. That person has changed so much. Right? And that's another thing, the percentage. Every year, we are changing. Every year, your spouse is changing. As you're evolving, are you keeping up with the change? Are you aware of those changes? How can you know? right? So these are questions that we have to ask, right? Percentage-wise, how well we know. So I'll skip that question for now. When you were dating, if you knew the things that you know about the spouse now, will you still choose to marry the person? Okay? Very important question. Very important question. After a while, when you're living with the person, you get to see what's inside the boat of the other person. The percentage, right, begins to slowly increase. You begin to see things that you don't like. You begin to see things that you do like. It could be something from the fact that, how many times have I told you? My pet peeve is, don't leave dishes in the sink. Don't leave socks over there. Can you do this? Can you do that? Oh, before marriage you said you'll do all this. What happened now? Right? So you begin to know the other person more and more and more. When you were dating, the person that you knew, right? Compared to the person that you know now, if you had that information when you were dating, will you still want to be marrying to that person? Don't answer that question. Reflect. Reflect. Because if you say to yourself right now, you know what? Acha, absolutely not. No. You know what? I would have other choice. I would want to marry somebody else. You have to ask yourself about your commitment. Who did you want to marry? Who did you want to marry? Did you want to marry the person that you had in your mind about the Bollywood version of spouses, right? Perhaps that's what you think you knew about your spouse. Perhaps that was a fantasy. You wanted to get married to a Bollywood version of your spouse. And that's what you married to. You married an ideology. You married a person that you had fantasized about. And then all that crumbles down after marriage, right? I mean, as a joke at work, this person has been with this other person for 30 years. And, people ask, hey, what's the secret? Oh, the secret's very simple. We never got married. Right? They're just living together. There's no commitment. Right? There's absolutely no commitment. But when you say that you love the person and when you have no commitment, don't call it love. Don't call it love. Right? You just want to have a safe life. You just want to have a comfortable life. Right? So, if we say that, no, I won't marry this person, that means that you have to ask yourself, how selfish am I? How much am I thinking about myself and my well-being? Not to say that your well-being is bad, thinking about your well-being is bad, but clearly you're saying to yourself, I don't want to work on this. Because perhaps the things that you're struggling with in the marriage is the way in which you are learning to acquire holiness. The very thing that you're struggling with, that in your marriage is probably the very path in which you get to experience Christ. And in order to experience that, what do we need? What do we need? A C word that I mentioned. Commitment. Yes, Christ, of course. Yes, commitment, right? Remember, in our spiritual life, one of the things I mentioned about is this. In your spiritual life, doesn't matter how many times you fall, what should you do? Never give up. Never give up, right? Because God is there with you. See, what happens oftentimes in marriages, there's this misconception, okay, I got married to this person and that's it. Nobody else is involved, right? See, you're setting yourself up for failure. When you do that, when you begin to say that, oh, it's just between you and I, that's it, there's nobody else, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because did you get a manual about your spouse of how this person functions when, in various situations? Did you get a manual about your spouse when you got married? Did you? I hope not. You wish. You wish. Why? Why didn't you? Because getting to know another human being involves sacrifice. Getting to know another person involves commitment. Getting to know another person and loving them unconditionally involves you to invest your life in that person. Very important, right? So expectations set for marriage. We expect certain behaviors to remain, to be incorporated, certain behaviors to change and never exist. right? This is what we expect in marriage, right? We have certain expectations. We set ourselves with certain expectations, right? We begin to discover things inside each other's boats. Remember that example that I gave, right? Certain behaviors, attitudes, thoughts, things come up that you never expected to experience in marriage. In spite of this reality check, we choose to remain with them, right? We choose to remain with them. Why? Why do you choose to remain with them? Because you want to work on this marriage. Because you realize this is a committed relationship, right? Because we live in a society where society teaches what? Hey, the very moment that you feel uncomfortable in the slightest bit, what should you do? Yes. In other words, that's the first option. It's not the last option, right? The first option is, hey, let's get to divorce, right? It's like when you have a small, injury on your hand, it's like, oh my God, I need to get amputated, right? Wait, hold on. What's the injury about? Let's look at that. Let's work on that, right? Let's take responsibility for it. After that, if it gets to the point where it cannot be cured, it cannot be healed, then amputation is something that we need to consider. If it affects the entire body to the point where the entire body is going to be infected, yes, then that is an option, right? That's why the church doesn't allow divorce, just like church doesn't allow abortion. But the church looks at every single situation. Every single family is different. You cannot say, oh, that person got divorced, that person got divorced. Oh, that means the church allows divorce. No. The church does not allow divorce. The church looks at each and every situation to see whether are they really working on their salvation or are they destroying one another's salvation. Maybe it is better for them that they separate, right, than living together in sin. Because sometimes, even though they may be married, they don't have a marriage. There are many people who are married. They're living like roommates. They're living just together. Even though they had a marriage, a date set, and they had a marriage, and they had a wonderful marriage, and blah, 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 blah. Not marriage, wedding, but it's not really a marriage. Right? So, what is the purpose then? What are we trying to do with marriage? Well, how do we know we're doing marriage properly? That's another question that we have to ask. So let's talk about the dating phase for a moment. Those who have dated, it's a messy affair. Right? It's a messy affair. Why is it a messy affair? Because, you're dealing with people's emotions, feelings, as much as Ryan mentioned, Ryan, we and I, we both, are from the same place. Back in New York, we grew up together. One thing that Ryan mentioned, directed questions. Directed questions. You could ask all the directed questions you want your spouse or your fiancé during the dating phase, but do you think you really get to know the person by asking questions? Right? I mean, no you don't. Because questions may give you information. It's information, but doesn't mean that you have to know the person through that. Because getting to know the person means, remember the thought and the emotions? Remember that thought and emotions, right? That's where really the person is. And where is really the person? Where is the person really? Right? The question is, how well do you know the other person's news? Right? And if you think that you get to know the person by saying, oh, I know the person because this person studied here, this person studied there, this person in India, they were from here, blah, 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 doesn't mean that you actually know the person. You know about the person. Right? To getting to know the person is getting to know who that person is in its entirety when it comes to their mind, body, and soul. Not just what they do in the world. Right? So, the true self is often hidden during dating time, right? Remember those who are married now. Remember the time that you were dating, you really cared about what you looked. Perhaps every time that you were, getting together at a restaurant, whatever it may be, you think, oh my goodness, do I smell? How do I look? Is my hair correct, right? And all that kind of stuff, right? You were very much concerned. Why? You want to present yourself how to the other person? How do you want to present yourself? Perfect, right? Attractable, right? You want to be liked by the person, correct? But then, what happens right after marriage? Yes, they're laughing. What happens after marriage? After perhaps a month after marriage, is that even a factor? I mean, after a while, you think that you're married for all these different reasons, right? But after that, it's not going to matter. The looks and the smell and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter afterwards. What really matters is what? What really matters a few more years after into marriage? What the person is really like. The true person inside, right? Perhaps the single people are asking, oh my goodness, what is, am I trying to scare you by saying these things? No. That's not the intention. The intention is, I want you to really stop and reflect and ask the question, why do you want to get married? I ask this question all the time during premarital counseling. Why do you want to get married? And then they often say, oh, this person's like this, that person's like that, and I feel like I have a good companion. No. And I stop them and say, no. I don't think you understand the question properly. Why do you want to get married? Forget this marrying this person. Why do you want to get married? And oftentimes they're shocked. I don't know. Nobody asked that question before. I never stopped it because I got a job. I have my own place now. The next thing is to get married. What? That's what society has taught you? That is what your family has taught you? Upset, my parents are asking me, hey, find somebody, hurry up, right? They never stopped and said, listen, marriage is about this, marriage is about that. No, they just want to get me married. No. Don't ever get married because your parents are forcing you to get married. Don't ever get married because society tells you to get married. Get married because you want to become what? Because you want to live a holy life. Because marriage is, you're signing up saying that I want to live a life of Christ. I want to live a life of virtue. I want to live a life of holiness. And in order to do that effectively, the church has provided us with two paths. Marriage and monasticism. Right? Very clearly. Another thing that the church also provided in the early church was actually group living, so to speak. In other words, there were people from the same gender who used to live together. They used to work in society and all that, and the church blessed them saying, okay, you don't want to get married, you don't want to be a monk, you want to live in the world. All right, so that you won't fall into sin, you have to be in a community. So you all live together, right? As friends, you come together, you pray together, you work in society together. God blessed it, but at the same time, they're guided. You have to be guided. Even when you're living that kind of life, you have to be guided by somebody. Very important, right? So, we have a mental checklist when we are dating somebody. Looks, education, career, values, family, finance, parents' approval, social acceptance, likes and dislikes, compatibility, and faith. I put faith last. Because I don't know how much that is a factor. But, at one point in time, that was not a factor. It's slowly becoming an important factor for many. And I'm so happy that is the case, right? Recently, I was speaking to an NGOCSM kid, and he was telling me, he was very distraught. He has a job now, and he's ready to get married, and he was dating this person from another denomination. And he was very distraught, saying that, I had to call it off. And I asked, what's going on? What happened? Well, she's from a different faith, and I don't want to leave the Orthodox faith. She understood that she had to convert, right? And she had to come into the faith, and I couldn't, she basically was asking me, hey, I have to accept their faith, right? Forget this whole, the female accepts the faith of the guy and all that kind of stuff. I said to myself, can I live for the rest of my life with this person and love that person unconditionally, knowing that I won't be part of the Orthodox Church? And the answer for him was no. He decided to break it off. So there are people like that, right? And I was shocked. And when you share that story to many of our parents, you know what they're going to say? Ha, why would he do that? Nallu penna, right? And nalla jodi, this, that. How would you want to call it off? Orthodox വിശ്വാസം തന്നെ വേണമെന്നുണ്ടോ? നല്ലപോലെ ജീവിച്ചാ പോരെ? You understand what I'm saying, right? That's oftentimes the reaction of many of the parents. But there are a group of people now who are convinced of the faith, saying, I'm marrying so that I could become close to Christ. If I cannot do that, if I cannot, sit down with my spouse and pray to Saint Mary, to asking her for help, I don't want to marry that person. There are people like that, right? Compatibility. This is very tricky. There is, remember the demons come and says lies to us, right? Yes, and this is one of the lies that couples end up believing. Oh, if we are compatible in so many ways, this marriage will work out. Why do you think many people fight? Because they're not compatible, right? In other words, what is compatibility? What is compatibility? Compatibility is basically saying, oh, this person enjoys this. I enjoy that very thing. This person is this type of a person, and I'm this type of a person. So our personalities match. And the more you're able to find commonalities with that person, somehow marriage will work out. It is a myth. It is a myth, right? Why? Why is that a myth? Why is that a myth? People change. Absolutely, people change. Why else?
Sometimes two of the same personality clashes.
Absolutely. Arrogance can be cultivated when two compatible people have same personalities. When one person wants to do it a certain way, the same very thing want to be done a different way, what happens? Problems happen, right? It's like two people, oh, we love the Orthodox Church, right? Two people, compatibility. We love the Orthodox Church. Yeah, I love the Orthodox Church, but I like the Greek Orthodox Church. Oh, no, I like the Indian Orthodox Church. No, their faith is more stronger than the Indian Orthodox. They're both compatible. But you see how it can clash, right? So you have to ask yourself, is compatibility that's actually holding the marriage together or your relationship together? Because that's the case. Because there are people that I know who are complete opposites. Complete opposites. Some the couples in the sense where complete opposites in the sense where, one person would have to want to have breakfast at 9 o'clock. The other person ends up having breakfast at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's so many differences in terms of their personality, but they get along really well. They get along really well. They accept one another. They don't make those incompatible things a problem in their relationship, in their marriage. Right? So that's a myth. Compatibility is a myth. So when you're dating someone, don't ask yourself the question, oh, how many similar things do we have? Similarities are good, but don't confine what you like about that person based upon compatibility, right? You want to be able to ask yourself, what more does this person have other than what I like about this person, right? So united for what purpose? What are you uniting yourselves for? See, we signed up for marriage to become united, to come closer to one another, right? This is what we signed up for. So when you start off your marriage, when you're doing the dating phase, you are apart. And marriage is supposed to bring yourselves closer together. But does that really happen? What really happens is you end up growing apart more in marriage. You think that you're actually coming closer, right? Because you're living together with that person, you're getting to know more about that person. Again, knowing about that other person information doesn't mean that you're close to that person. Right? Ask yourself, how much closer have you gone with your spouse? We end up growing apart. And I know many, many families in which marriage, they were really healthy in their relationship before marriage, but after marriage, what happens? What usually happens after marriage that forces them to grow apart? Yes? Did you say kids? Absolutely. Kids. What else?
Money.
Money. What else? Work. That's a big one. Work is a big one, absolutely. What else?
Faith.
Sorry?
Faith.
Faith? Faith. pushes you away from one another?
It can, because you might have different values. Like
Okay.
when do you go to church and things like that.
Oh, okay. That can be a factor. Okay, faith can also be, okay, in that sense. What else? What else grows you apart? Yeah.
Bad choice in friendships.
Bad choice in friendships. Can you speak a little bit more about that? What do you mean by that?
I had a friend who had a bad marriage, and it was bad decisions on both parts, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
it seemed like alcoholism may have pervaded his family and lifestyle, but he definitely had a little bit more negative influence from the friend circle he
Okay.
chose to have.
Okay, so, influences that's coming from the outside, such as friendships. Absolutely. Okay, that can pull spouses apart. Okay, but I would say one of the big things I would say is basically once after you're married, you are basically in a routine in life. Life just takes over your work, the routines of work, the routines of life. You have no time to spend together, right? And what happens? The emotions and the feelings that you had towards your spouse during the dating time, what happens in marriage? Is it still there? What happens to it? When you're growing apart, what happens to those feelings? It fades away. It fades away. It goes away. If it doesn't, in your relationship, that's wonderful. That's great. If you're cultivating it more, that's wonderful. But this is one of the most important things that we have to ask ourselves. Am I coming closer to my spouse, or am I going apart? Because in order to come closer to one another, we have to make sure one thing. Forget compatibility, forget likes, dislikes, looks, all that kind of stuff. You have to make sure that you're both on one platform. At least on one thing. And you know what that is. I heard it. Jesus Christ. Absolutely. Right? What is the common platform? Jesus Christ. Absolutely. Reference page. So what I did was, for that reference book, PDF that I gave you, towards the end, there's an article by Elder Emilianos from Simona Petra Monastery from Manatos on marriage. It's a wonderful article in which half of the article is dedicated for those who are trying to find a spouse, and the other half is basically for those who are married, right? In which I've broken down into paragraphs. If you could look at reference page number 49. I actually don't have, do we have a printed version here of the reference book? No, okay. If somebody can read number 49. Those who have it. Wait, hold on. There you go.
In marriage, it seems that two people come together. However, it is not two, but three. The man marries the woman, and the woman marries the man. But the two together also marry Christ. So three take part in the mystery, and three remain together in life.
Absolutely. What is that saying? Marriage is between who? Three people, right? It's not just between you and your spouse. It is between three people. So if the platform, if you both are not on the same platform, when it comes to understanding Christ, what happens? What happens? You're not going to agree on anything. If you cannot agree on Christ, forget agreeing on anything in life, right? Because if you don't agree on the purpose, are you going to agree on the plan and the direction in which you work out that purpose? You're not, right? Just imagine if you both are traveling, you get into the car, and when one person is saying, oh, I'm headed to Delaware. Oh no, I want to head to Pennsylvania. Will you both ever end up in any of these destinations? No, right? You have to have the platform of Christ that allows us to understand our purpose, which is, the purpose is what? After 5 sessions. What is the purpose? To become holy, to become one with Christ, right? How that's worked out in your relationship is in reference point to whom? Who's the reference point in that relationship? Understanding how to work that out. Jesus Christ himself. So you have to ask yourself, how many times are you asking God's opinion about when it comes to certain decisions in your life? When was the last time you asked your spouse, wait, before we make this decision, let's ask God. Let's stop and pray for a moment about this, right? When it comes to our children, when it comes to moving, when it comes to career, when it comes to education, even when you're dating, when was the last time you said, God, if this doesn't work out, it's okay. Let it be your will. Right? It's very important that we start off with that platform. It's important that you find someone who are willing to be on that platform. Right? That's why in the church, who gets married? Only those who are baptized, Orthodox. Gets married in the Orthodox Church. Why? Because you're called to live a particular lifestyle. We don't marry people in the church for the sake of having them just get married off. You're marrying in the Orthodox Church so that you can live a particular lifestyle. The lifestyle of becoming holy. Right? Otherwise, I always say, hey, you don't have to get married in the Orthodox Church. You can get a civil wedding. Go get a civil wedding. It's okay. But that's against the church. No. You know what's against the church? You marrying just for the sake of getting married. That's against the church. Because when you're marrying in the church, then what you're saying is, God, I want you to be in my life. I'm going to live according to your commandments. I'm going to live according to the church. I'm going to receive sacraments because I want to be holy. I'm going to bring my family towards church because I want to become holy. Not only myself, but also my spouse as well. Right? That's what you're signing up for. Right? So, having that common platform, very important when you're choosing someone. Elder Emilianos, again, this is paragraph number 48, if somebody could read this. By the way, he was the abbot, I think he was the abbot of Simona Petra Monastery in Manatos. He has written, how does he know about marriage? You may be thinking, he lived in a monastery. How does he know so much about marriage? Why should we listen to what he's saying? Remember, I think I mentioned this last time, Manatos, many married people visit Manatos. Many married people receive guidance from monks from Manatos. So these people have heard almost everything under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun for them. So they have counseled multiple people, right, when it comes to marriage, living a holy life. And this is the wisdom of them. And he actually passed away this year, May 9th, 2019. This is what he says. Somebody could read number 48.
Marriage is a bridge leading us from earth to heaven. It is as if the sacrament is saying, above and beyond love, above and beyond your husband, your wife, above the everyday events, remember that you are destined for heaven, that you have set out on a road which will take you there without fail. The bride and the bridegroom give their hands to one another, and the priest takes hold of them both and leads them round the table dancing and singing. Marriage is a movement, a progression, a journey which will end in heaven in eternity.
What a wonderful statement, right? When marriage is a bridge leading us from earth to heaven, right? You may be thinking, wait, the only bridge that I know that leads from earth to heaven is the liturgy. Well, guess what? Marriage itself is a liturgy. Marriage itself is your connection with heaven. And you may be thinking, Achan, do you know my spouse? Achan, do you know what I have to deal with every day? Achan, do you have any idea? It's one thing if that person is holy and is praying all the time and living like Elder Emilianos. But my spouse is so far away from Elder Emilianos or any of the female saints of the church. But that's exactly the reason why it is a bridge from earth to heaven. We want an escalator. See, when it comes to getting to heaven, we want an escalator. We don't want steps. What's the difference between an escalator and a step? What? More work. Steps, you gotta climb. After 2, 3, 4, 5, like, oh my goodness, this is getting tough. Escalator? Just stand there. We want an escalator type of life. That's what we want. We want it easy. We don't want it hard. We don't want it difficult. We want things to be easy and quick. We don't want to work hard for something greater in our life. But what he is saying is, this is the very token, this is the very passage towards heaven. But the problem is, what do we do? What do we end up doing? We rely on ourselves. We don't rely on Christ. We don't rely on anything spiritual in our life. We don't receive guidance from spiritual people. We don't allow the church to be involved in our relationship with our spouse. What do? We say, no, I think I got it. We just rely on our own devices. We rely on our own sources. What happens? More and more you try to rely on yourself, what happens to you? You get frustrated. You find yourself in failure over and over and over again. And you don't know what to do. You feel stuck, right? The service of marriage prayers. This is the Sedra from the Blessing of Crowns. This is what it says. May they become rich in spiritual gifts and interested in divine works which profit both body and soul. And may they lay up for themselves treasures in heaven. Unite their hearts that they may ever draw nearer to your holiness and flee away from the bondage of accursed Satan. It's saying unite their hearts, not unite their brains. Help them get to know one another more. Information. No. Unite their hearts as if the very being of the other person is being united through marriage. Right? So that they may be industrious in observance of your commandments. Okay, so let us look at, again, this is another prayer from our church, from our prayers of the wedding service. May He keep them from all, He is Christ, keep them from all impure love, and inflame their hearts with the blaze of His love, that they may love each other. May He adorn them with imperishable beauty. Another word to redefine, by the way, beauty. Beauty is not outer beauty, it is the beauty of what? Of the soul. And what is that beauty related to? Remember the white surplice? Right? The incorruptible beauty that we receive from Christ. That's what we're saying. God, through marriage, may they do laundry to that cloth that God provided you, right? And what does it say? With meekness and chastity, whose fragrance is more than of enchanted fragrance of lilies. Another word to redefine, fragrance. Just because you may be smelling good all the time doesn't mean that you have good fragrance. What is it talking about? The fragrance of your soul, right? So when the soul is beautiful, when it's set apart, when it's experienced God's glory, through hard work, through dedication, through commitment, your soul begins to have fragrance that is so strong, that is holy. So how do we measure a successful marriage? One thing when I talk to couples, also when it comes to premarital counseling, we look at the service, the marriage service itself. And one thing, oftentimes that I get the question is, how can we talk about divorce in the marriage ceremony? It's so out of place. Why do we talk about divorce and that whole passage from Matthew chapter 19? Why do you think they have placed the passage about divorce in marriage? Why do you think they have placed that according to the Syriac tradition? Why do you think they do that?
To emphasize the seriousness of the sacrament of marriage.
Okay, so emphasize the seriousness of marriage. Okay, can you speak a bit more? What exactly is important? Particularly when it comes to talking about divorce, how he says, whoever divorces his wife except for the reason of fornication and marries another commits adultery. The disciples said to him, if such is the case of a man and his wife, is it not expedient? It is not expedient to marry. The disciples are saying, then it's best not to get married, right? If divorce is not allowed. But God basically says you have to be committed to the marriage, right? Why? Why is that passage so important for a marriage ceremony? Yes?
It emphasizes the commitment factor.
Emphasize the commitment factor, absolutely. And along with that, remember how St. Paul compares marriage. What does he compare it to? The husband and the wife represents who? Christ and the church, right? Christ married the church on the cross, according to what the prayers teach. Christ married the church on the cross. He is suffering, he is in pain, he is in agony. But that itself is, basically when you look at the cross, that's the marriage ceremony of Christ and the church. Right? What did he wear? He wore crown of thorns, crown of martyrdom. right? So the church is emphasizing the fact that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but how committed you will be based upon what? How much you love that person. Correct? And the love that we ought to have to our spouse should be a reflection of Christ's love for the church. And was it easy for Christ to love the church? Right? And remember the passage where in the book of Hosea, right, the relationship between Christ and the church is exemplified as what? Well, remember the passage in which in the book of Hosea, God asks Hosea to marry a prostitute. And Hosea says, wait a minute, you want me to marry a prostitute? You do know that she's going to leave me afterwards. Yes, I know, but I still choose to love her. That's the unconditional love that Christ has for the church, right? So having that loving relationship, that commitment, as you mentioned, is such an important thing. See, how do you measure a successful marriage? It's not about not having troubles and problems in married life. See, when you're willing to work out your marriage, no matter what it takes, that is a good sign of a successful marriage, right? When you're basically saying, listen, you know what? I promise at the altar that I will work on this. I'm willing to work on this. Of course, the other person has to work on it as well. It shouldn't be just one person working at it. When you are not willing to quit, when you're basically saying, you know what? I know it's going to be difficult. I'm not willing to quit. I'm going to work at this. But remember, as I mentioned before, right? When it gets to the point where the church understands that having them both living together, and it's going to cause problems in their salvation, the church allows divorce. Absolutely. And that's allowed. It's not, and a blanket permission is not given, right? When you're willing to admit your faults and willing to change. When you are willing to seek help. When you're willing to give up your pride. Many, many, many times what I see happen in relationship is this struggle between pride and humility. Pride and humility, right? When the couples end up fighting, when they have difficulties, it's usually the question of pride and humility comes in, right? So struggles in marriage that comes our way, that questions our, yes?
Can you go back real quick?
Oh, yes, sure.
Sorry.
There are various struggles in marriage, and I want us to reflect. Remember the 3 R's: reflect, redefine, and reform. Yes, I hope and pray that you're able to have that in your relationship with your spouse once you're able to see certain things that's happening in your life. Okay? Can I change this one?
Thank you.
Yeah. Struggles in marriage. The business of life takes over. Don't have time for basics of life. We have too many tasks and things to worry about. Paying the mortgage, taking care of possessions, social commitments, work obligations, shopping, cleaning, children's obligations, pick up and drop off, extra activities, homework, cooking, church, blood relations, co-workers, friends, planning for the future. How do I look? Am I gaining weight? Health, doctor's appointments, spouse, friends, things that you have to worry about. And the church understands this. Okay? Don't think that the church is oblivious to this. The church understands this. The clergy understands that this is a struggle of marriage. And you're saying, Achan, on top of that, you want us to work on our relationship with one another? I don't even see my spouse. I don't even see my spouse because we're just so busy, we don't have time. I always advise this for couples. If you're so busy because of all these things, and you don't have time to spend time with your spouse, there is a problem. There is a problem. I always ask this question as well. See, let's just say that you're in the business of all this. Something happens to your health. What are you going to do? Oh, I don't have time. I'm going to continue on doing this business of my life. What are you going to do? You're going to go and see your doctor. You're going to do something about it, correct? Same way, it's important that you make time for your spouse. And when I say that, I'm not saying you have to spend about 5 hours with your spouse. It could be 5 minutes. It could be something very small. I was talking to a couple recently about this, and they said, you know what, after talking about these things, they decided after work, one day they're just going to go and get coffee at Starbucks. So they did that. Once a week, what they do is, on Fridays, the children are picked up and they're dropped off to someone, and then for 5-10 minutes, they go to Starbucks, they have coffee, they have talk. That has changed their lives. Just that 10 minutes of just sitting down and enjoying company of one another has changed their relationship. And you may be thinking, no, that's not going to work for me. Well, you have to make it work. Perhaps it's not 10 minutes that you need. Perhaps you need an hour. Perhaps you need more than an hour. Whatever that you need to sit down with your spouse and say, hey, how are we going to incorporate this? Perhaps we may not be able to do it for every day, perhaps once a week. Because when you do that, you begin to enjoy the company of another. There are many couples who begin to see the spouse as an enemy. There are many couples who end up seeing spouses as a challenge, or some person I have to fight against or defend against or some sort. And the relationship, again, it just separates more and more and more and more. Spending time with your spouse, having quality time is such an important thing. It doesn't matter how busy you are, because guaranteed, you are distracting yourself in so many ways, in other ways, right? How much time do we waste doing nonsense stuff that doesn't really affect your life at all, right? If you are able to just survey the time of each and every day that you spend and survey the week that in which the business of your life has taken over, guaranteed you'll find time. Time is a gift that God has given us, and God who united both of you will be able to provide that time as well. Let's see. So, we always function. Yes, thank you. We always are exhausted. We are exhausted. We always, as I think you mentioned before, we're constantly giving. We're giving to our children. We're giving to our workplace. We always feel like, I need a vacation all the time, right? I need a break all the time. We're exhausted. And when you're exhausted, and when you're exhausted, when you're not in the right mind, when your emotions are all over the place, and the smallest thing comes your way, how do you think you're going to react? Very bad. Correct? We get frustrated very quickly, we get annoyed, we get agitated, right? So when exhaustion hits, relationship conflict begins to rise. We feel we're not taken care of. We are constantly giving and no one is catering to our needs. We begin to feel that no one cares. We begin to feel isolated, alone. We do not feel value to what we offer. We ask, what's the point? What's the point of this whole thing, right? Why am I living like this? We begin to ask our spouse, I did this, why can't you? That type of an attitude, right? When we are constantly doing work, we go to work, we come home, we're taking care of the kids, and when you are empty, you feel like you're not valued anymore. We feel empty, we feel alone, we feel, does my spouse even care about how I think, how I feel, what I'm experiencing? When was the last time you asked your spouse, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you doing? Hey, do you need a break? Do you need to take some time away? Have you asked that question? Not in the relationship, but just taking a break from just doing chores, running around all the time. When was the last time you asked that? Even if that person says, no, I don't need a break, just asking that question makes the other person feel valued. Just asking that question makes that person feel that, wow, he actually or she actually cares. That's wonderful. So I'm just going to conclude. I'm just aware of time because we have to head for prayer. I just want to conclude by saying that, marriage, it's workable. It's workable as long as you're, number one, on the same platform. And what's that platform? Jesus Christ. You're working, if you don't have a purpose in your marriage doesn't have a direction. Each and every marriage should have a direction. Where is it headed to? To Christ. If it's not headed to Christ, and if you think that it's just in a routine basis, it will go into destruction. You have to stop and ask yourself, am I working on my relationship with God? Am I working on my relationship with my spouse? Right? Another thing is this, we have to keep in mind, your spouse's well-being is important for the relationship. You have to ask your spouse, hey, when was the last time you had a blood test? Hey, when was the last time you went and enjoyed yourself with, I know you enjoy going with your friends, or I know that you enjoy watching that movie. When was the last time you went to your spiritual father for confession? It's very important that you ask that question to your spouse, right? Because you're accountable to one another. Because when you are able to do that to your spouse, the spouse should be doing that for you as well. Taking breaks and being able to find time to discuss things. Hey, how are we doing as a couple? Hey, are we coming closer or are we going apart? How are we doing with our kids? Right? What do we need to work on more? What should we work on this week? What should we work on next week? Right? Planning out vacations. These things are so important to nourish the relationship because oftentimes marriage feels like a burden. It feels like it's a weight because you're not working on the purpose. And as long as we're not, committed to working on this marriage, working on our relationships, we're not doing justice to what we promised to God in terms of what marriage is. Okay? So, do we have time for perhaps one or two questions? And then yes.
Okay, so first question, if you are already on the journey of figuring out yourself, and that's this ongoing process, if you don't know yourself that well, does that negate the conversation for marriage, or like how would you know if you're ready?
Well, you will never, I wouldn't want to say never, you're always in the journey of getting to know you more and more and more. But when you get to the point where you have come with peace with yourself, with many things in your life, and when you are mature enough, and that's the conversation you need to have with you and your spiritual father. You're mature enough to be able to have someone in your life. And what does that entail? It entails a lot of things. It entails the fact that you have your own discipline, that you're able to stand on your own 2 feet emotionally, spiritually, right? When you are able to have that level, then you are able to have someone else in your life as well. Right?
And then the second question, so you had defined a successful marriage as like working at it and not giving up and all of these great things. And then you said when you're dating, you only know 5% of that person.
Yes.
Is it, I don't know. Is it bad to say that like once I'm not married, so I don't know. But is it bad to say that once you're married and you've been married for some time that, hey, like I wouldn't choose to do this again because now even though you're committed, even though you're trying all these things, is it necessarily bad to say that?
Depends upon the relationship. I don't know. Because it depends upon what you have got to know about that person, right? So that's a conversation that needs to take place between both the couples and their spiritual father, where they come together and say, hey, what's going on in the relationship? Maybe, it's nothing, it's probably something trivial that they're making into a big deal. Would you be able to find it in your heart to overlook it and still work on the purpose of marriage, right? Maybe it is a big deal that needs to be addressed. Maybe that needs to be addressed and, some certain things need to be squared off. That conversation has to take place, depending upon what it is. Okay, great. So I'll be here in the evening and also tomorrow as well. And if there's any questions, feel free to reach out.